Winter is upon us. California's temperatures have plunged into the frigid 60s, so gather up your scarves, mittens, winter coats, snow pants, and Uggs, and put them away because A, 60 is not cold, and B, on this joyous holiday, we're cozying up next to the tree, sipping down some hot chocolate, and taking a journey through the officially licensed Diamond in the Fluff holiday movie Advent calendar. What is Diamond in the Fluff, you ask? Well, it is our show here on Cinema Jacket, which you have just so happened to tune into our very first episode. Every so often, we here at Cinema Jacket will sift through the nearly centuries worth of fluff that filmmakers have pumped out in hopes of finding a diamond. Like how I did that, isn't that cool? Now, if you watching at home or wherever the heck you're watching this from have ever done an Advent Christmas calendar, you'll probably understand what the title of this video means. For those of you who don't, an Advent calendar is, it's essentially you complete an action for each of the 24 days leading up to Christmas Day, ending on the 24th Christmas Eve. For some people, they'll buy like the Lego ones, so each day you open a little door and there's a little Lego thing for you to build. For some people, I think it's stuff like eating a piece of chocolate or a piece of candy, stuff along those lines. Here at Cinema Jacket, for this special holiday edition, Christmas Advent edition of Diamond in the Fluff, we watched 24 holiday movies. And you're probably thinking, oh, that's cool, you watched Elf, you watched Santa Claus with Tim Allen. No, I watched 24 Christmas movies that I've never seen or heard of. You have to understand, 24 movies. And some days I would have to watch 3 or 4 in a row so I could get this video out in time. 2020 was hard enough, but to end my year like that it's brutal. Now, with all that said, let's take a look at what our first movie is. Go ahead and open the door. Elves. Okay. What could this be about? Is this like a direct-to-DVD sequel to Elf, starring Will Ferrell? Are there multiple Will Ferrells? Gosh, I hope so. Elves is a pretty effective B movie. There's a lot of stuff to love. There's a lot of stuff that's unfortunately pretty bland. As a B movie, I would say this one does well enough to not be forgotten completely. It's kind of the high end of the middle of the road. Not quite good, but not terrible. The movie is about a lot of things. There's Nazis who need elves that are an experiment of theirs to mate with a virgin. And there's also dudes in black suits who I wasn't sure if were with the Nazis or not. There's an old drunk actor playing the main character. The movie's kind of nonsense. There's not really a whole lot happening that's clear and concise with what it's doing, but it's silly and dumb enough that you can probably get enjoyment out of it. I mean, there's one scene in which a dude finds a bomb in his car, just like a little stick of dynamite, and instead of throwing it out the window, he jumps out of the car. So there are moments in this movie that are so bad they're funny. Plus, any movie that ends with a scene where suddenly the title of the film makes sense and you go, oh, of course, Elves, is perfect. Well, we seem to have started at rock bottom. But the good news is we can only go up from here. So what's the next one? Black Christmas, 1974. That's a bit of an older one. One of the things I do know about this movie is that it's often credited as the first slasher movie. It kind of created the genre that we now know the names of Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger from. I mean, it was about a decade or 2 decades after that this movie really started the genre that took off like crazy. Probably my least favorite genre, unless you're counting like rom-coms or stuff like that. But yeah, on this joyous Christmas day, let's spend some time with the grandfather of the slasher genre.
I have some stuff to do in the afternoon, and then I was just going to get the 7:20 train into the city.
You know what? Since we're already on Black Christmas, why don't we go ahead and take a look at both of its remakes? The first one is from 32 years later. 32. And the most surprising thing about this 2006 remake is that it's a remake. It's not even a sequel. Like, this movie's never had a sequel, despite the fact that it set up one of the most lucrative, low-budget subgenres of all time. I don't know. Okay, let's take a look at 2006's Black Christmas.
"15 years ago, on Christmas Eve, his family became his victims."
What have you done?
Now, for our final Black Christmas movie. This movie came out in 2019, and I remember this trailer pretty well. I mean, I remember sitting down in the theater, seeing it for the first time, and it gave away pretty much everything in the movie that could have been even remotely surprising or interesting, just right there in the trailer. So needless to say, I'm not really looking forward to this one. So I might have to prepare an apology to Elves, because that may not have been rock bottom. The slasher genre is interesting. In kind of the 70s, even the first Halloween movie is a lot more of a drawn-out suspense thing. It was about the dread and the horror, that aspect of it. And as we see in the mid-2000s, 2006, and then on until today, slasher films, in my opinion, have turned into a little bit of like an event film. Both the 1974 and the 2006 version of this movie have the same concept. There's a bunch of girls in a house, and there's a creep up in the attic, and he's making weird phone calls. The call is coming from inside the house. That whole, I guess now it's a trope. And the main difference between 74 and 06 is that 74, you know who the main character is. Not every character, but most of the characters, down to the cops, the detectives, everyone being affected by these events of these mysterious killings and calls, are being focused on. It's much more of a character-driven piece. And in the 06 version, I didn't know who the main character was. I thought it might have been Mary Elizabeth Winstead, based off of name recognition alone, because she was the only actress that I actually recognized in it. But no, she gets freaking whatever happens to her in this scene. And it wasn't until the very last moments of the film that I was like, oh, I guess this is our main character. I would argue that they weren't our main character. They were just the one who survived the longest. Now, all that being said, I mean, I sound like a snob of, oh, well, the 1974 of the original has more character development and writing. All that said, 2006 was my favorite Black Christmas movie out of the three. 1974 is something you really have to, like, you sit down, you really have to, like, really, really watch. 2006 was, I sat down with no expectations. I was constantly surprised with the reactions it was getting out of me. I was constantly giggling. I was having fun with the 06 version. I mean, the gore effects, as corny and kind of over the top as they may be, were kind of the most fun aspect. It felt more like a B movie than a studio movie. But this is the kind of movie that I could make kind of a tradition of sit some friends down, get some like some snacks, some stuff, and just watch this movie with a bunch of friends, and it would be a whale of a time. Now, let's talk about 2019. Okay, 2019 is bizarre. It feels like the writer or director had a script. They had a story they wanted to tell. They wanted to talk about the sexual assault that goes on college campuses. Unfortunately, they went to the studio, and when they walked into the producer's room, the producer had a little sticky note, or like a note in his planner saying, hey, we need to make a Black Christmas movie or we lose the rights. So they're talking about this random movie, and he's not really listening. He looks down at his desk, and he's like, could it be a Black Christmas movie? A Black Christmas? What? And that's how this movie was born. The biggest problem with this movie is that it's got a absurd concept. They want to tell this grounded victim drama. And on the other side of it, they have a satanic cult that is all the men on campus who discovered this because of cancel culture, canceling the head bust of the headmaster of the school. Like crazy. Insane. But this movie treats it with so much seriousness that when they have characters saying lines like this.
But I did everything that I was supposed.
He'll do worse than that to you. Your body, your choice.
You're all insane.
No, not insane, Miss Stone. Simply men.
It's absurd. Also, the girl team-up shot that was in the trailer, this one, that is in the final probably 3 minutes of the movie. There's a short scuffle, and then it immediately ends. And on top of the 2019 version, it very much feels like a 2019 movie. I mentioned the cancel culture side of it that leads to the demonic, whatever the heck that even was. There's a very interesting theme and a POV that this film is from. It's very much from the girls on this. Obviously, one of them already had petitions to cancel this dude, so you kind of get like politically where this film was probably lying. One of the girlfriend's boyfriend is in the room, and the girls are talking about something about like all these men are bad and all these men are pigs and all that stuff. The dude, obviously being a really stand-up guy the entire film, says, "Hey man,
not all men have power."
Did you just not all men me?
And for a second, I was thinking, oh, are they going to actually have this debate? No. Everyone gets mad at him and tells him to leave. Because then the dude comes back and you're like, hey, he's going to save the day. And he gets freaking shot in the face. So, for a movie that wanted to have that theme to tackle that issue, it didn't do it in a very mature way. It felt very one-sided. And because of that, it comes off very close-minded and just cringy. Well, now that we found that rock bottom is a lot lower than I thought it was previously, I'm afraid. So, what's next? A Nick Cage joint, huh? Trapped in Paradise? I mean, I've never heard of it, so that worries me a little bit. But Nicolas Cage is in it, so it's got to be good. At least there's some freakouts, maybe. Nicolas Cage movie I've never heard of. That's... Okay, it's a Christmas movie. It's a Christmas movie. Come on, let's keep the joy up. We can't let these movies defeat us this early, okay? Let's go watch it. Oh, I hated this movie. I didn't finish it, so I can't really have a full opinion, other than the fact that it was so terrible I didn't finish it, which I think is valid. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Jack Frost, much like the Green Bay Packers, is a tale of two halves. The first half is actually surprisingly decent. I really enjoyed the first half of this. Like, unironically really enjoyed it. Not because it was so bad it was good, but because it was surprising in the things that it was doing. You never really get the feeling that Michael Keaton's character is as absent as those fathers usually are. Like an Elf. The dad character is always working at the office. He's never there for Christmas. Bah humbug type guy. Michael Keaton, on the other hand, is charming as heck with the kid, with his wife, with the wife character, and he's a really enjoyable guy. I mean, to the point where you're like, maybe he's not so bad. Unfortunately, he dies. It flashes to like 1 or 2 years later, and both the mom and the kid are dealing with the grief in this very realistic, like almost uncomfortably realistic way in a children's Christmas movie. And then the film goes into the second half. This is the kind of movie where they get a big name actor to voice this character, probably over the phone from a studio somewhere else there. And the entire time that they're on screen, they just nonstop are saying these random, probably ad-libbed, like jokes, like zingers.
You know, sometimes it's good to have a big butt.
Stop him in the ice!
Stop him in the ice! Get real! I don't even have pockets! You the man!
No, you the man!
Nope, I'm the snowman!
And that's where the film takes a massive dive in quality, because it's like, you were so charming a second ago, and now you're reduced to just rattling off unfunny zingers at a machine gun's pace. So as for the question of how is this movie as a children's Christmas movie, I would say it's decent. You know, the first half is really strong, the last half will keep kids entertained enough. So, I mean, it's an inoffensive thing. I think it's perfectly fine for this holiday season. Rare Exports. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got to the first movie that I'm actually actively looking forward to. I mean, which is weird because I know nothing about it, but it sounds really interesting. I just read the synopsis literally off camera, and I'm excited for this one. So let's go! Rare Exports is such a cool movie that is kind of disappointing in one aspect, but I'll get to that in just a moment. What it does so well is it builds suspense. All the deer at this part of the border have been like brutally murdered. There's people up on the top of the mountain drilling for something that this guy has hired them to dig for. There's so many kind of mysteries where you gotta connect the dots, and it's super interesting the entire time. Now, this is one of the movies that I don't want to give too much away in because the way that it all unfolded was actually super cool. But the aspect that disappointed me, which isn't even the movie's fault, but I was expecting this movie to at one point devolve into like a B-movie like chaos of just like, okay, now everyone dies and all these things are killing everyone. There's fake blood everywhere. And it has this amazing restraint not to quite go there. Because instead of doing that, it chooses a very kind of comedic route with kind of this Christmas spirit to it that gives it a very uplifting ending that I wasn't expecting at all. So if you can take subtitles and you really enjoy some well done suspense, check out Rare Exports. It's on Amazon, I believe. Please watch it now. Santa with Muscles, starring Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, the brother guy. Produced by, let me read my notes here, Jordan Belfort, the guy from Wolf of Wall Street. Like, not from the movie, like the movie's about him. I think this movie might have been a money laundering scheme. They definitely cared about the production of this movie. It's definitely not bad. 'Cause scams never phone it in. Alright. With a title like Santa with Muscles, you know that this is just gonna be either terrible or surprisingly fun. And honestly, it's the latter. They're just thinking, okay, we have Hulk Hogan, we have a little bit of money, let's just go crazy. Let's just do whatever the heck we want. We're not really expecting a return on this. As I said, it's a scam, probably. And it kind of works out the best for it. Hulk Hogan is surprisingly good in this movie.
Do you have a minute?
Fax me, you little brat.
Like, I don't know if it's that he's actually uncomfortable around children or he's just acting that way, but whatever the actual answer is, I love it because he's kind of hilarious in this movie. And it feels like a comic book movie. I mean, you got the evil crystals in the mine underneath the orphanage. You got the saving the orphanage plot line. You got the Santa has to save the day plot line. You have the billionaire guy who hates everyone and children, gets a heart of gold thing at the end. I mean, this movie is completely a Christmas movie. So is this movie as bad as people have said it is? No. I mean, it's not great. Probably the last half devolves into more like kids movie antics, but there's so much wacky stuff that happens in the first 2/3 of it that it'll keep pretty much anyone entertained as long as you have probably a group of friends with you, or, you know, you gather the family around and be like, hey, I have to show you this really bizarre movie starring Brother Hulk Hogan. Perhaps I should be giving these movies more of a chance. I mean, that's 2 movies in a row that have pleasantly surprised me, and I was already looking forward to one of them. Let's start being more positive about this.
Join me and my family, and together, let's put Christ back into Christmas.
We'll start after this movie. Kirk Cameron Saves Christmas is a movie that I hesitated to put on this list just because of its religious aspects, but because I myself am religious as well, I thought I would kind of throw my 2 cents into the pot of thoughts on this movie. I was a very good debater when I was in school, and I still think I am. So watching this movie is a little bit of a nightmare for me. The first thing that really happens in this movie that is worth any note is the director of this movie plays a character who is an atheist, I think. And he's sitting in the car venting to Kirk Cameron about like, Christmas is all fake, it's a pagan holiday, and the Christians took it over, and there's nothing about Jesus in it. And then Kirk Cameron straight up tells him, and I'm not even paraphrasing, he says, you're wrong. And from that moment on, anybody who watches this movie who believes kind of the same things as the character the director is playing is going to shut down. They're going to be closed off, and they're not going to want to hear anything that Kirk Cameron has to say. And I think that's the biggest problem of this movie, is that it presents its side of the argument in such a one-sided, overbearing fashion that I'm not exactly sure what the intention of the film is. Is it preaching to the choir? Do you put this on for Christian families and Christian little boys and girls on Christmas just to, as I said, preach to the choirs, to just make them be like, yeah, I agree with that guy and I don't want to hear anything I disagree with? Or is this just a terrible, terrible attempt at actually trying to appeal to atheists? I just don't see this as an effective method of opening that door to them beliefs-wise. I mean, telling them you're straight up wrong and then basically just overbearing, getting in on them for all the things they believe that are wrong and telling them why your side is correct in a way that seems to lack any personal touch or any care is just a terrible, terrible way to go about this. I wanted to tackle this movie specifically to tell you that as a Christian myself, I see this as a awful, terrible attempt at trying to get a message across. And I feel the exact same way about the God's Not Dead movies. In my own writing, I probably have aspects of Christian ideology to an extent, but it's subtle. It's brought across in personal ways that isn't, almost malicious in its intent or conniving. It's just, they need to rethink the way that they're making Christian media is all I'm saying. So without getting too much deeper into that, because it would make the video longer than it already is, let's move on.
Ouch, that had to hurt.
Oh, yeah, I sure did.
If you let me down, it's alright.
That you, Arglist?
Drop the gun.
You ever notice how weird people get this time of year?
Turns out it was a Christmas movie, but barely. I mean, barely. I mean, besides some of the gangsters in this movie being like, hey, I'll be nice, it's Christmas, I won't shoot your wife this time. Not really a Christmas movie. I mean, that said, it's directed by a Ghostbuster, so that was pretty impressive. And his direction is actually pretty snappy. It's the momentum of the movie rarely lets up. It keeps going. It keeps introducing you to new and interesting things. The dark comedy, if you like that kind of thing, is actually hitting a majority of the time. That said, though, get out of here. You're not really belonging on this list. So give me the next movie. We're moving on.
This holiday season. War on Christmas.
A Christmas horror story. Nice. Obviously a parody of A Christmas Story, just with a horror twist to it. Directed by 3 guys, huh? 3 guys? And starring William Shatner. I bet, yeah, he's totally in it for more than 15 minutes. A couple weeks back, I tried watching a William Shatner movie that I found in a bargain bin, and, well, this is how it went.
So I watched Devil's Revenge, and it's really, really bad. William Shatner's only in it for like maybe 7 minutes tops. It's... just keep drinking.
Straight up no. This movie sucks. I was looking forward to it, and it sucks. There's a couple pieces of the anthology here. I'm gonna try to remember what each of them are. There's one with teenagers in a basement. There's ones with a kid and his parents, and the kid gets replaced with a wood elf or something. There's one with Santa Claus fighting zombies. Oh, yes, that's right. There's one where they're running from Krampus in the woods or something. Like they're at an aunt's house, and they're told about Krampus, and they leave, and they get attacked by Krampus or whatever crap. They're presented in this anthology of they're all intercut within each other, and none of them mesh. There doesn't seem to be an overlying theme. It's obvious that either one of 2 things happened. One, these were all unrelated short films, and they found each other, and they're like, hey, we also made a Christmas horror film. Let's combine all of them, make it an anthology, and it'll be the length of a feature film so we can sell it for more. Or the other one is, it was made to be this way from the beginning,
and everyone involved had no idea what they were doing. Because every single time an anthology one starts, it gets kind of to a point where it's kind of progressing in the story, and then it cuts away. And it never feels purposeful.
I know. Don't.
Now, originally I thought the concept was that William Shatner was like a radio DJ type of dude, and he was telling the stories, and we got to see them, so they were all told just like one story, then a little William Shatner bit, then one story, then William Shatner bit. No, it just cuts randomly. While it cuts back to William Shatner sitting in a studio talking about, it's Christmas time, I'm gonna put some alcohol in my eggnog, and blah, blah, blah. So I think the most baffling thing about this movie is the ending that I am going to spoil. So if you don't want to spoil it, you can hit the timestamp here, or you can just go where the little breaks are in the video. Those will tell you where the next movie is too. So William Shatner throughout the film is referencing this guy who storms out of the studio in the very beginning of the film. And at one point near the end of the movie, all of a sudden it's revealed that the Santa Claus zombie elf Krampus showdown was actually the guy who stormed out of the studio and was going on a killing spree in public at a mall. And the police shoot him to death. I guess that could have worked if you went with, okay, he's a radio DJ and he's telling stories and maybe it's based off of real events, or maybe it's about him and he's making it into a holiday version. No, it's just completely unrelated to the William Shatner thing. There's not really much else to say about this movie. More Christmas horror, Santa's Sleigh. Unfortunately, we found this in the deep recesses of the Walmart bargain bin section of their website. So it's probably not going to be that good. Unless it's so good they hid it from the world so they could keep it to themselves. Yeah, that's probably it. I don't consider this movie a guilty pleasure. I consider this a legitimate favorite of mine. The opening scene itself sets the tone of the movie brilliantly.
Dear God, don't let this bird taste like a shoe like it did last year.
Santa?
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
At this point, I'm thinking, this is a terrible set of main characters. But it doesn't matter, because Santa Claus storms the room and murders every single one of them in the most fantastic ways possible. Now, immediately after this, the movie does introduce our main characters. But the important thing here is that the movie realizes that, like, okay, we spent 5 minutes with the main characters, cut away to Santa Claus killing somebody for no reason. He's going AWOL. Santa Claus is the son of Satan, and he lost a bet to an angel in a curling competition 2,000 years ago. And for 2,000 years, because he lost the curling competition, he has to be nice. Now the 2,000 years is up, and he's just killing everybody willy-nilly. He's stabbing people with candy canes. His freaking reindeer bison creature is running old women off the road. It's insane. He's stabbing people with menorahs. I mean, if you're looking for a legitimately good, enjoyable Christmas horror movie, watch this. This movie is legitimately a movie. It's completely ridiculous. And the best part about it is, I could see myself making this. If I were born like 20 years sooner,
I would have made this movie. That's why I love it so much. Every single time I wanted something to happen, I would call it out, and one of two things would happen. Something better than what I said would happen, or exactly the thing that I said would happen. And it wouldn't be like, oh, this is going to happen. It's going to be like, oh, please do this. Because I'm not really expecting the movie to be on my level, and then it does it, and it's brilliant. So, okay, I'm going to stop gushing about this movie, because Santa's Sleigh is legitimately one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I want it on Blu-ray. So if you're still giving out Christmas presents, you can mail it to me. Make sure it's a Blu-ray of Santa's Sleigh. Krampus! Yes! I have a friend of mine who won't stop reminding me every day to watch this movie. I mean, hardly a day passes that he doesn't remind me that this movie exists and I can finally watch it. So two things are great. One, he can shut up about it. And two, I can enjoy another good movie in a row. While I was watching this movie, I made a note in my notebook that the real horror is family at Christmas. And I wrote it down kind of half-jokingly because I kind of understood where the movie was kind of going. But that's honestly the point, I think, is that family at Christmas is one of the most chaotic things, especially if it's presented very much like the film shows it, of family where it's like every moment with them is like walking on eggshells. And that theme carries through much of the movie, is that it's very character-driven. So going into this movie, I wasn't sure of, is it more of a slasher type? I wasn't quite sure. But what we get is a very, very cool, well-written, I should say, character-driven kind of mini monster movie of sorts, which makes sense as to why he was chosen for the Godzilla movie. The way that he handles the creatures and the monsters that show up is so good. What the director does in this movie is that he establishes each character so strongly in the first just 10 minutes. I think it's only 10 minutes. I made a note of that in my notebook. And then you get straight into, okay, we're getting into the Krampus stuff. And because he's done that so quickly, now you can get right into the monster feature stuff and not take 30, 40 minutes like a lot of other films normally would to get to the monster fun. And because they've been so fleshed out, you can have the monster stuff do things to them that directly relate to them as characters, and you get why characters will go out into the snow or stay back or how they interact, and that means character arcs can happen over the entire runtime rather than just like the last 30 minutes. And I really can't say enough good things about this movie. For one reason, there isn't really anything bad about it, and two, if I said anything bad about it, I know that Kieran would probably kill me. 2 great movies in a row. That's great. It's such a wonderful break from the doom, the gloom, the conflusion, and
It's the most beloved Christmas story of all time.
What?
And this holiday season, Ralphie is back.
Ralphie?
Now he's a bigger kid with an even bigger wish.
Holy jeez.
A Christmas Story 2, the official sequel.
Ah yes, A Christmas Story. Okay. Oh, A Christmas Story 2. They made a second one. A TV movie, huh? Oh gosh.
12 holiday movies, and 12 more on the way. This has proven to be too much for any one man to handle. His friends, they've already done their holiday collaborations. He is alone. What was he thinking? His aspirations have surpassed reality. He's flown too close to the sun. How can he possibly come back from this?